The woman in seat 18A looked at me with tears trapped in her eyes and whispered the kind of sentence that changes a stranger's life forever: "Please pretend you know me when we land." At first, I thought I had misheard her over the hum of the engines and the bright afternoon sunlight flooding through the airplane window, but then her hands began to tremble around a folded boarding pass, and I saw the fear on her face was not nervousness from flying. It was the fear of someone who knew exactly who would be waiting when the doors opened. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when one stranger decides not to look away, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest act of courage can become someone else's lifeline. My name is Armin Vale, and I was flying home on a clear Thursday afternoon after attending my younger sister's graduation in Seattle. The flight was supposed to be simple, forgettable, and quiet. I had planned to sleep, ignore my emails, and land in Denver before sunset with nothing more dramatic than a stiff neck. But life has a strange way of placing people beside us at exactly the moment they are falling apart. She boarded late, wearing a pale green cardigan despite the warm weather, her dark hair tied loosely behind her neck, and a small silver suitcase rolling behind her like it weighed more than it should. Her name, I later learned, was Soraya Mendez, though when she first sat down beside me, she only gave a polite nod and stared out the window as if the clouds might offer her an escape route. For the first hour, we barely spoke. The cabin was washed in golden daylight, babies fussed somewhere near the back, and flight attendants moved through the aisle with practiced smiles. Soraya kept checking her phone even though there was no signal, unlocking it, staring at the blank screen, then locking it again. Every few minutes, her eyes darted toward the aisle. I noticed the small bruise near her wrist only because she pulled her sleeve down too quickly when she saw me glance at it. I wanted to ask if she was okay, but strangers on airplanes follow invisible rules. We protect each other's privacy even when silence feels wrong. So I said nothing, and that silence has stayed with me longer than I care to admit. The change happened when the pilot announced our descent. The moment his voice came through the speakers, Soraya stopped breathing normally. Her shoulders stiffened, and her fingers gripped the armrest until her knuckles turned white. I asked softly if she was afraid of landings, and she shook her head without looking at me. Then she leaned closer, so close I could hear the break in her breath, and said that a man named Cashin was waiting at arrivals. Her ex. She said he had somehow found out which flight she was on. She said she had left him 3 weeks ago after years of promises, apologies, flowers, locked doors, and mornings where she had to convince herself the person in the mirror was still alive. She had moved to another city, changed her number, and told almost no one where she was going. But he had found her anyway. There are moments when a person's pain arrives in your life so suddenly that your own problems feel embarrassingly small. I thought of my unread work emails, my overdue rent, my quiet loneliness waiting for me back home. Then I looked at Soraya, this terrified woman pressed against an airplane window in the middle of a sunny afternoon, and I understood that she was not asking me for drama. She was asking me to help her walk through a doorway she could not face alone. I told her my name. I told her I would not leave her. Her eyes filled instantly, but she did not cry. Some people have spent so long holding themselves together that even tears seem like a luxury. As the plane landed and rolled toward the gate, we made a plan without making it look like a plan. I would act like an old friend. We would walk together. I would keep her on the side away from the crowd. She had already texted a women's support volunteer from the airport Wi-Fi before boarding, but she did not know if anyone would arrive in time. Her bag contained only clothes, documents, a small framed photo of her late mother, and a notebook where she had written down every cruel thing Cashin had ever said to her, not because she wanted to remember, but because she was afraid she would forgive him if she forgot. That detail broke something in me. I had always imagined escape as a single brave act, like running through a door. Soraya taught me it was more like crossing a frozen lake, step by step, afraid the past might crack beneath you. When we stepped into the jet bridge, sunlight spilled through the terminal windows ahead, bright and ordinary, cruelly normal. People laughed, stretched, checked messages, complained about baggage delays. To everyone else, it was just another afternoon at the airport. To Soraya, it was a battlefield. She walked beside me with her chin lifted, but I could feel her shaking. I began talking as if we had known each other for years, telling her fake memories about a coffee shop we had supposedly visited in Portland and how my sister would be furious if we arrived late for dinner. She understood immediately and gave small nods, even managed a faint smile. That smile was not happiness. It was survival learning to disguise itself. Then we reached arrivals, and I saw him before she did. Cashin stood near the glass doors in a navy shirt, tall, clean-shaven, holding a bouquet of white lilies like a man auditioning for forgiveness. His smile appeared the second he spotted her, but it did not reach his eyes. Soraya's steps faltered. I gently placed my hand near her elbow without grabbing her and said, loud enough for him to hear, that my car was waiting and we needed to get her home. Cashin moved toward us with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. He said her name like it belonged to him. Not warmly. Not lovingly. Like a command. I did not know what courage was supposed to feel like. In movies, it looked strong and effortless. In real life, my mouth went dry, my heart hammered, and every instinct begged me not to get involved. Cashin's eyes shifted to me, measuring, dismissing, then sharpening with irritation. Soraya's hand brushed mine, not holding it, just touching it for 1 second, and that was enough. I told him she was not leaving with him. He laughed softly, the way dangerous men laugh when witnesses are nearby. He said I did not understand, that couples fought, that she was confused, that he had flown in just to fix things. But Soraya surprised us both. Her voice came out quiet, but clear. She said she was not confused anymore. That sentence changed the air around us. Cashin's face tightened, and for a second the mask slipped. He stepped closer. I stepped between them. A security officer near the information desk looked over, sensing the shift. Cashin noticed too, and his voice dropped into something colder. He told Soraya she would regret embarrassing him. I saw her flinch, and I hated that he still had that power over her body. Before he could say more, a woman in a red blazer hurried toward us from across the terminal. Her name was Inez, the airport volunteer Soraya had contacted. Behind her came 2 security officers. Inez did not ask dramatic questions. She simply stood beside Soraya and said she was safe now. Cashin tried one last time. He held out the flowers, his expression softening into practiced sorrow. He said he loved her. He said he had changed. He said all the things Soraya had once prayed to hear and now feared more than insults. She looked at the lilies, then at him, and I watched grief pass through her face like a storm crossing open water. She was not just leaving a man. She was burying the version of herself who had believed love meant enduring pain. Finally, she said that love should not make someone afraid to come home. Then she turned away. We did not go to baggage claim. Inez led us through a side corridor toward a quiet office near airport services. The sunlight followed us through high windows, and outside, planes glided across the runway under a flawless blue sky. Inside that small office, Soraya finally sat down and began to cry. Not softly. Not beautifully. She cried like someone whose soul had been holding its breath for years. I sat across from her, unsure whether to speak, while Inez made calls and arranged transportation to a safe location. Soraya apologized again and again for involving me. I told her she had nothing to apologize for. The truth was, I felt ashamed that helping her had felt like a choice when for her, surviving had never been optional. Hours later, after statements were made and arrangements were secured, Soraya stood outside the office with a paper cup of water in her hands. The afternoon had deepened, but it was still bright, the airport glowing with that strange golden light that makes even tired places look hopeful. She thanked me, but the words seemed too small for what had happened. I told her she had done the brave part. I had only walked beside her. She shook her head and said that sometimes walking beside someone is the brave part too. I did not know what to say to that, because it reached into a quiet place inside me. I had spent years believing my life was unimportant because no one depended on me. That day, I learned that meaning does not always arrive as a grand purpose. Sometimes it arrives as a trembling stranger in seat 18A. 6 months later, I received a postcard with no return address. On the front was a watercolor of a small seaside town, bright with morning markets and blue boats. On the back, Soraya had written that she had found work at a community art center, that she was taking long walks again, that she had painted her bedroom yellow because she wanted to wake up inside sunlight. She said she still had hard days, but fear no longer made every decision for her. At the bottom, she wrote one line I have never forgotten: "Thank you for helping me remember that strangers can be safer than the people who claim to love us." That postcard stayed on my fridge for years. Whenever life made me tired or cynical, whenever the news felt too heavy or people seemed too selfish, I looked at it and remembered the airport, the lilies, the red blazer, the trembling hand, the voice that finally said no. I remembered that kindness does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need a plan, a title, or perfect bravery. Sometimes kindness is simply staying when walking away would be easier. Sometimes it is believing someone the first time they say they are afraid. Sometimes it is standing in the daylight of a crowded terminal and refusing to let someone face the darkness alone. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Your support helps stories of courage, healing, and human kindness reach the people who may need them most. Special request: comment "I believe in kindness" if you would have stood beside Soraya too. And maybe that is the real lesson of what happened on that ordinary daytime flight. We may never know who around us is quietly fighting for their life, their peace, or their second chance. The person beside us may be carrying a fear too heavy to name. The stranger asking for help may be one moment away from giving up. But when we choose compassion over comfort, when we choose to see people instead of passing by, we become proof that the world is not only full of harm. It is also full of hands reaching back. Soraya got on that plane believing her past was waiting to drag her home. She walked out of that airport knowing her future was still hers. And I walked out knowing that sometimes, the most important person you will ever meet is the stranger who asks you, with tears in her eyes, to pretend you know her until you realize, in the deepest way that matters, you do.